Gen that was. The gen that was.
The gen that was.
The gen that was.
The gen that was.
This is the gen that was.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Gen That Was. This time we are talking about 2015 and I'm very excited because there's some really juicy games that we're going to get into. You probably already know what those are.
Project Beast!
Project Beast, that's the title that it's stuck with this whole time and became a classic. It's like Dark Souls Project Beast. Joining me on this episode is Daniel Bloodworth.
Yo.
Ian Hink.
Yo.
First time on Gen That Was. Very excited about that.
Hello, welcome to me.
And Brad Ellis.
Yo, not first time.
Not first time. Three-peat.
3 in a row.
But we had to have you on this episode. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about, which is good. If you've already heard this spiel before, please bear with me. But there's a lot going on in this show, and just to give you a quick rundown, in part one, since we're looking back on the gen that was, as it were, we'll be going over every year from the launch of the PlayStation 4 to the Xbox One in 2013, all the way to our current year, 2020. And the first part is to kind of set us up, to give us some context, talk about major things that happened in this year that really defined it as a year in regards to Sony and Microsoft. We won't be talking about Nintendo, we won't be talking about PC, we won't be talking about things that aren't directly related to the PS5 at Xbox One. Some of that is open up to interpretation. PS4, yes. I have my PS5 right back there, so it's at the forefront of my mind. And then in part two, we'll be talking about the big five games that I've selected that, again, I think really defined the year and are very interesting to talk about. These tend to be big games that there were a lot of conversations about, that sort of thing. And then in part three, my actual favorite part of the whole thing, I think the last two parts have been really, really good at this, is we actually put our money where our mouth is. We play one of the games that we talked about in the Big Five and kind of challenge your own opinions, comment on things. Maybe Huber will have a revelation about Knack. These are the kind of things I think that you can hopefully expect from part three. But without wasting any more time, let's talk about 2015. All right, so the first thing that I have is not a good news story.
Oh.
It is the Konami-Kojima breakup.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mess. Konami removed Kojima's name for promotional material for MGS5 The Phantom Pain. This is the year that Phantom Pain launched. In November of 2015, Kojima Productions Los Angeles was shut down. Kojima wasn't at the Game Awards because Konami prevented him from attending. Kiefer Sutherland accepted the award for Best Action Adventure Game in his place. And then there were also just, I think, kind of fan problems with MGS5 overall, including the microtransactions. There was a lot of dialogue around that, as well as the incomplete story, including the kind of crucial mission that was cut from the game. And so there was a lot going on. And I think to kind of contextualize this conversation, I just want to know what your feelings were as we were going through this, and if it's changed the way you felt about Kojima, Konami, Metal Gear Solid, or anything related to that.
Changed the way everyone felt about Konami, for sure. I mean, Konami was one of the greats, and sure, they hadn't been, really keeping up with that. They'd made a lot of weird decisions with Castlevania and those kinds of things. But, yeah, this sort of, along with some other news stories coming out about, Konami seeming to be very abusive and, really, isolating certain workers and things like that, that really this year feels like it cemented Konami as the bad guy, and lots of, explicit memes, I will say politely.
Blood, it's funny because I think there are some stories, like Microsoft pops into my head, where I think their journey from 2013 all the way to 2020 really changes quite a bit. What's funny about Konami is it doesn't really at all.
Right.
Like, I don't think the general opinion of Konami has really improved much over the years since we've been doing this series. And I think this is definitely a low point. But it doesn't really get better from here. And that's obviously, this is something we've talked about many times before, but it's such a huge shame considering the series that they have under their belt.
I don't remember if this was 2015 or not. But the insult to injury that Konami did was when they started putting out all those pachinko machines. Like when they put out that Metal Gear Pachinko, I think that might have been the next year, but that was when I was just like, all right, it's dead. They're not games anymore. Where
it has like Metal Gear Solid 3 cutscenes, some of the most beloved moments of the entire franchise, and like they look amazing. And then you're like, oh, it's a pachinko machine.
Ben, this was a really interesting time. Like, you and me were, like, a lot of us were all really big Metal Gear Solid fans.
Yeah, favorite series
And there's things I liked about Metal Gear Solid 5. I think it does really well. But from parts of Metal Gear that I love, like the story, it was just such, like, a disappointment and just kind of slap in the face almost, you know? And it was, like, just an explosion that continued on to all these beloved franchises we like. Like, Castlevania, obviously, has been going through huge ups and downs, but this was just the end. Like, all these great IPs like Silent Hills, the promises of what they could do, it was just kind of like them lighting everything they had that's great on fire. Just being like, nah.
I think that the death of Silent Hills is just, it still hurts. Like it's just so, oh man. And like to this day I don't think we know like the details of this breakup, and I wonder if we ever will. Because it sounds like one hell of a story. Whether Kojima's more at fault than we assume, like because he's difficult to work with or something like that we don't know about, or if it's just Konami being insane, I tend to believe that. Given the stories about them like turning off lights and stuff on employees and whatever. But yeah, man, losing PT. Woof.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about what they've done since this happened. Like, with all these great licenses under their belt, we've got, like, 3 collections maybe. They did, like, a weird Metal Gear Survive game that is, like, bizarre and no one wants, and, like, that was it. They just gave up.
They did do the TurboGrafx thing, which is
they did do
very
that.
Cool.
It is very cool. You're right about that.
But then, like, they've, like, done, like, Bomberman on Switch and Stadia and a few other, like, collections like that, but yeah, it feels like essentially the accountants took over the company. Like, these other sectors are making a lot of money. Hiring these Hollywood actors is costing us too much money. What are we doing? We need to stop doing this, and they just like, cut it off. They just cut off the flow of cash to games.
What's disappointing about this too, Ben, is this kind of happened before with Igarashi and Castlevania and that whole fiasco of why he left, and just like you see it happen to another franchise you really love. It's painful, man.
Let's get out of this nonsense. We've wallowed in Konami plenty in our time as game trailers and Easy Allies. Let's talk about a highlight for this year, the thing I am most excited to talk about in this section, and a highlight for game trailers itself. This is the E3 of games, baby!
Oh,
shit, man.
Baby.
Now let me run all this stuff down, because you may have forgotten how fucking juicy this E3 was. Sony reintroduced The Last Guardian. This is like right at the front of the press conference with the gameplay. Go ahead.
After baseless rumors that it had been like completely canned.
Yeah, that was like an RGN article. I remember.
They showed a gameplay demo and they gave it a 2016 date. This game was originally announced at E3 2009, so 6 years later.
Yep.
Horizon Zero Dawn was officially announced.
It was only announced then, really?
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well. That was something that I didn't realize until doing research on this.
Because I felt like they had pulled that off for a few years, but yeah, I guess it. Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII Remake was officially announced.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the most ridiculous, unlikely thing until.
Well, yeah, until the next time.
Yeah. One of the lines in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer really stood out to me. It was, "At last the promise has been made," which I thought was just such a perfect line. Watching the press conference back, just hearing the roar from the crowd is spectacular.
A little bit of excitement.
And of course, the next thing, which you've already predicted, the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter was announced.
Yep.
At a Sony press conference.
At
which
a Sony
still
press
blows my mind.
conference.
But
Yeah.
a Kickstarter is announced on stage.
EaseNet did receive development help from Sony, so there are ties there.
Yeah.
Also said during that is the fate of Shenmue is in your hands.
Yes.
Obviously, a huge moment for Michael Huber specifically. It's a shame he's not on this episode to talk about it. But I think just being wrapped up in his excitement was really fun for us. This Kickstarter, man, just astronomical. Reached its $2 million goal in less than 9 hours. And if you check the Kickstarter website right now, it received $6,333,295.
Crazy.
I think it was one of the earlier like big video game campaigns, if I recall correctly. I don't remember if it was like the first one to be the biggest. Certainly isn't the biggest anymore, but
Right.
yeah, it blew up.
Yeah.
I backed the damn thing, and I had no intention of playing it, just for Huber. At the moment, like I saw Huber crying. I was in the booth, and I was like, "All right, I'll throw $60 at this thing, like whatever."
I felt like I was giving money to Huber directly.
Yeah, me too.
Like I was just wiring it to him.
Here you go, bud.
I'm like, dry those tears, sweet child.
Just a couple more things I want to go over before we kind of let loose on overall feelings about E3 2015. Rare Replay was announced at E3 2015.
Hey, nice.
Which is still like I think it like an Xbox One highlight for me.
Yeah,
I think it's such
definitely
a
is.
fantastic collection. And what was cool about it is it was announced and then released shortly thereafter on August 4th of that year.
That's feel good.
Yeah. This is also the first presentation of Gears of War 4, the first non-Epic Games Gears game.
Right.
But yeah, obviously this is a really exciting time, and if you could kind of just put yourself back into that moment as we were watching things at game trailers, how did you feel?
Pure joy.
Yeah.
Pure joy for like elation for hours and hours, because Final Fantasy VII Remake got announced, dude. The long rumored, fabled remake that Square seemed to be teasing since like that PS3 tech demo that everyone wanted, and it just finally happened. And like, especially after the fiasco of them announcing the PC port
Right.
for PS4, it's just like
At PSX
Finally.
the previous year.
The previous year,
Yeah.
correct.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
People kind of always say that generations sort of take a while to get into the swing of things, and I think if you kind of look at this lineup and how big some of this feels, I think E3 2015 is kind of the moment where it's like, all right, we are fully in. Like, giant promises are being made. Everybody's excited. Everybody wants to play this stuff. This really felt like kind of a full swing moment.
Yeah, it
for
felt
the
like
consoles.
we're in because they announced stuff, but it's in reality we didn't get a lot of that stuff for
Yeah.
years. Like we
Right.
got Final
Right.
Fantasy this year.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like with Final Fantasy VII and Shenmue in particular, like those are projects that are just impossible. Like they felt like, no, this is never going to happen. Yes, fans would rally, pull the rally cry every now and then, but it's like, no, they're not going to do this. They're not going to go through the effort to remake Final Fantasy VII to look like that PS3 demo. They're not going to, Sega's never going to invest in Shenmue again. Like, that was a huge loss for them, and they basically, killed the hardware business in a way. And Sega still didn't. That was the whole. That was part of the surprise. And that was part of it too. Is that Yu Suzuki had left Sega already, and so it was like, yeah, that's not. Even if Sega had made a Shenmue, then like nobody would have guessed that it would be anything like really to continue that story. But it's like, no, they actually gave an independent Yu Suzuki the rights to continue Shenmue. Like all of this stuff is just it's bonkers. It's totally bonkers. So just to see
Every
it being
dream
announced,
came true, baby.
yeah. And Last Guardian, I think, was less of a surprise, but it had been gone so long that just to see it again and to actually see it running in real time after so many demos and stuff and changing systems, it was supposed to be on PS3.
PS3, yeah.
Yeah. And it feels like it was made to be run on the PS5.
I was gonna say running in real time.
To your point, kind of talking about how some of these things took a long time. to come out. We didn't get Final Fantasy VII Remake until this year, for instance. But I think the differentiation is the kind of hope that came out of this E3. I think is really important to talk about, because I think, something like Last Guardian that spent its time with the PS3 just kind of like languishing and not being there, and then it kind of makes a triumphant return on the PS4. Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think, last generation was not like the best for Final Fantasy that it has ever been, and so and obviously Final Fantasy VII Remake was something people have wanted so desperately for so long. And the same thing with Shenmue 3, where I think it was kind of this collective moment where it's like we feel like we're being listened to.
Right.
And I think that's a really good thing to establish.
Yeah, that's why we call it the E3 of Dreams, baby.
I will say,
wishes we wanted.
This E3 was so good that I think it has kind of made it an unfavorable comparison point for E3s that followed.
Right.
And I think that's something that we've kind of casually done, is it's like we've waited for that moment, like when are they going to bring this thing back or have this huge announcement. And I think, obviously there's diminishing returns to that. I think theoretically, like there's only so much you could do, but
they like just knocked it out of the park 2 years in a row. This year they did it with announcements, and the following year they did it with presentation. And some good announcements, but we'll talk about that next time.
I think this will always be the best, not necessarily specifically because of what Sony did, but because I've never seen Huber happier. And it's like, well, that's how we have to gauge E3s. Like, how happy do we make?
We're chasing that dragon ever since, that reaction moment.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, has, like, helped us in a big way too. Like, this press conference, definitely. I mean, it didn't set us on our path or anything like that. We were already well into it, but like, definitely impacted our trajectory in inconsequential ways.
Well, this is the first time we'd ever done anything like this. Sitting around watching press conferences live.
This was the first time, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Because before, like, we were a provider of a press conference. You didn't necessarily just go to Sony or Microsoft. Like, you went to us or G4 or IGN. So
we would clip it out and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we would have the press conferences up in full, and then like all the little different segments. But it was never us being involved and watching it. We were all behind the scenes.
Our next topic is one that I'm kind of opening up more broadly, because it's fun doing this show and seeing how somebody initially talks about something versus how it ended up. And so in 2015, Sony renamed Project Morpheus to PlayStation VR. And I want to list off just a couple of interesting points, but I kind of want to use this moment to talk about PSVR in general, not just in 2015 and then the following year, but kind of all throughout it. Because at E3, something that I noticed that they said is they were like, imagine playing multiplayer games with PlayStation VR, and they used rigs as an example.
Oh, and right.
I don't necessarily think that's bad. I haven't played rigs, but I completely forgot that rigs existed.
I forgot rigs existed. I played it.
I remember that E3. They had a booth of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that game exists too. Yeah.
I just think a lot of PSVR games that have gotten the most attention are single player experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless that's different for you guys. But yeah, I want to talk about what do you think of the legacy of PSVR? And the other thing that is interesting is Sony's very quiet about VR regarding the PlayStation 5. So PSVR games will work, but that's about it. They don't even work with the DualSense. And so it's very limited support, and they haven't really talked about future plans.
Yeah, because the DualSense doesn't have the light bar in the same way, so it really requires the PS4 controller.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because we got a little bit of blowback from a recent PSVR discussion, but it's, I think it's kind of this like quiet giant, and I'm not sure that Sony knows exactly where they're going, or at least they haven't talked about where they're going with it next. Because I think that the hardware has done really well for them. I think it's sold out a lot. I think there's been a lot of people that have picked that up as a consumer level VR device. But then feel like the traction on software isn't there, and so I'm curious like what the attach rate is on software.
Right.
How many people bought that thing 2 years ago that is just sitting in a box now and they don't touch it anymore? How many people, like Brad jumped into Star Wars Squadrons and was like really excited to play that game in VR, and then how much of a crossover there is to PC VR, which requires a lot more investment than just hooking up to a PS4.
You've got me worried now that we got blowback because of me, because I'm pretty harsh on PSVR typically. But just because for me personally, and like obviously it's a fourth the price of some other VR headsets, like the Index or whatever. It's like very much cheaper than that, and it shows. And like that to me was always the issue with PSVR is like I'm not Damiani levels susceptible to motion sickness, but I'm not impervious, and the PSVR will get me. Whereas Index, like I played Alex for a long time and was fine. Like I spent an entire day in Elite Dangerous VR and was fine. Whereas like, and maybe it's more on the game than anything else, but like playing Rush of Blood or whatever for 10 minutes, I was like, I'm out of here. I can't do this, And so who knows? I definitely feel like it's not a huge vote of confidence that PlayStation isn't talking about PSVR 2 or anything right now.
I think they'll make another VR thing down the line.
Yeah.
I think it did do well for them.
I do think that a lot of the stuff that, like we were talking about with the PlayStation 4 light bar and stuff, like that kind of solution feels very outdated.
Yeah.
I've always was like really kind of skeptical of the Move having the big ball on top that has to light up, and using basically the PS2 iToy style technology to drive how those controllers work. So now that we've seen with the controllers on the Oculus and the Vive and the Index, and just like how seamless those things are to use separate from the headset, I think that they need a new solution, but they also run into this wall of, we've sold so many of the originals, so what are we going to do with all those people that have spent hundreds of dollars on this device, and we're going to tell them that it really doesn't work anymore. It's just old junk.
I remember playing PSVR for the first time at E3 and being blown away. Like that was a highlight for me when I got to check it out. And I think the thing that really irritates me about PlayStation VR is there have been incredible high points to the point where I'm still really interested in it. Resident Evil 7 is something that was great.
Yeah, that kitchen demo at E3 before they revealed it was anything to do with Resident Evil, man. Yeah.
I think the first time using it, though, it really felt like you could buy into the this could be the future moment that you see so many times with new technology. But I do think Sony, in not every way, but in a lot of ways, has capitalized on it, where like Astrobot is not just like an incredible VR game, but I think it stands toe-to-toe with a lot of the best games that came out that year. And there are more recent things as well. Like I think Iron Man VR is pretty cool. Tetris Effect in VR is also pretty cool. And so there are just, what I'm trying to say is there are moments that I have with PSVR, and I think to myself, I really want Sony to continue this, but I feel like it's kind of this up and down where
it's like lightly sprinkled.
Yeah, it is
throughout
exactly.
the timeline. It's just like a little piece here and there.
That's a great way of describing it, Brad, because like I'll get re-energized about it, and then I feel like it'll go pretty silent for a long time. And I just wish, like, I think there's still so much potential there, and I do want to see them continue it, but I wish there was more momentum behind it.
That's kind of the great tragedy of VR, at least the way it feels to me right now, is like, because they needed an install base and because the ceiling is so high price-wise, those segments of E3 or like the times they sprinkled it in, they always just felt like sales pitches instead of, I mean, obviously they're all sales pitches, but instead of just being like jazzed on a sick-ass new game, they were like, there was always that just faint undercurrent, that little voice of like, please buy PSVR so we can make better stuff.
Right.
Right.
It's always there in the background.
Our last thing that we're going to talk about in part one is a little bit more nebulous, but I want to kind of start off the conversation with the console price cut. 2015, the Xbox One went down to $349. And one of the things going against it at launch was that it was $499. And at a GeekWire summit, Phil Spencer admitted to Sony having a huge lead. And I think why that's so interesting to me is seeing kind of the increase in prominence that Phil Spencer had. And I think the more candid nature that he was able to kind of give off really started to change the conversation happening around Microsoft and happening around Xbox. I think that really helped a lot. And then obviously more practical things like this price cut also helped. Another thing that was announced at E3 is Microsoft announced backwards compatibility for the Xbox 360 games on the Xbox One. And that was a very big deal. And
It's a very big deal.
Yeah, another sort of pivot for Microsoft. GDC, Phil talked about having all of their different things, having gaming at Microsoft come together in a complete vision. And you've definitely seen that with first-party games being available on PC and on console, things being playable on both previous gen and on next gen, and just this kind of unification that you've seen from all of the Microsoft stuff. The last thing that I want to point out is that Sony did respond to the price cut a little bit later. They also reduced the PS4 to $349. I guess I just want to use this moment to talk about how you felt about Microsoft in 2015, if you can remember, and how you feel like their story has changed, if it's changed, throughout the course of the generation.
Sure. Sum it up quickly. 2015, zero interest in buying an Xbox. 2020, I bought Series X the day it launched.
Nice.
So I think they have done a much better job of enticing me.
So what do you think are the steps that they made to make that happen?
2015, they set the bar at an all-time low of focusing on entertainment in the sense of TV and movies, and like games almost seeming like an afterthought. Obviously, there was some exclusive games, but how they presented the system, it seemed like almost second fiddle to me. As opposed to now where it's like games are front and center. Here is what we got. Here's everything coming. Here's all these new studios we got. We are committed to video games. Instead of telling me about live action Halo TV series or something like that.
I think something that Microsoft has done is kind of as they rolled these things out, my response was sort of like, oh, that's neat. And kind of focusing on the Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, it actually ended up having more of an impact than I was expecting. There have been times where I was like, I want to play Batman Arkham Origins. Oh, I can just play it on my Xbox One. Like, I don't have to think that hard about it. I can just pop the disc in. Or, oh, I want to play, Silent Hill Homecoming because I haven't played through it before. And, oh, I'll just pop that in. And I think there's actually so many instances where it has mattered to me more than I thought it would at the moment. It ended up having more practical effects. Even just being able to bounce between Xbox and PC has had more of an impact than I thought it would. It's like, oh, I have that installed on this platform, but I don't have it installed on this other one. We're going to be streaming something. Oh, I already have it ready to go. Or just like getting friends into things where they're like, oh, I don't have an Xbox, but I do have it on PC. We can still play with each other.
Yeah, so I think to me that was another part of that E3 of dreams and just impossible things, because I had friends, who, I don't know, for whatever reason I didn't like trust their sources or believe them or whatever, and like they were telling me, it's like, yeah, Microsoft, they're working on backwards compatibility on the Xbox One, and like that's not gonna work. They can't do that. Like, if it didn't work, in my head it was like, if it wasn't available day one, they weren't going to be able to pull it off. And then here they are, they announced that they pulled it off, and yes, it's been kind of this like kind of strange, like piecemeal, cobbled together, some games work, some games don't, and then over time more and more games work as they continue to work on the backwards compatibility. But as you're saying, like, now that I have the Xbox Series X and I started testing that, and just like being able to throw in Crimson Skies or Splinter Cell or Red Dead, and it's just like it's great. It's super great to not even have to worry about hooking up those old systems for certain things, and I would love for the gaps that are there to be filled, because I do have, I think Burnout 3 isn't backwards compatible, and So it would be cool to have everything like that, and just it's that level of convenience that I enjoyed on the PlayStation 3 of all things, playing my PS2 and PS1 games, and then the PlayStation 4 and the Switch. No, can't do that.
Yeah, I think that they've really turned around their corporate image in an interesting way, and they've turned around their business model in a really cool way, where it's less about kind of the traditional model and just getting people to subscribe and play stuff on various platforms and not really caring as much what platform it is. And Phil Spencer being kind of just like open about it. Unfortunate that they don't have actual launch games for their Series X, but like, what can you do? It's the right call to delay Halo Infinite because it looked like ass.
But yeah, I think the PC thing is actually really, like you were saying, Ben, it's another one of those little things that can be overlooked because now it's like, oh, it just works.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, Xbox and Microsoft seemed to have no idea what was going on with PC. Games for Windows Live was a nightmare.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah.
There's still 5 apps. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah, there's some weird things, but in general, like what he's saying, like when Forza Horizon 3 came out, and that was one of the earlier games that was, play anywhere. It was just amazing to be able to like boot the game up on the PC. It syncs your save for a second, and then all right, you're just playing, and it all works, and your friends list works, and you don't need to worry about whether they're on a PC or an Xbox, and just having PC gaming like actually work and not feel like a huge headache to get into. Something that's supporting that platform, and we still have to like with the Ubisoft games, right? The way Ubisoft games work now is the way games for Windows Live used to work.
Speaking of games, it is time to go into part 2, where we talk about the Big Five. Hey everybody, welcome to part 2, where we talk about 5 big games from the year that we've been talking about. This year it's 2015, and I want to focus on Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, a divisive game, to say the least. What do you guys think of Phantom Pain?
I did not regret my words or deeds, I'll tell you that much.
Sure, the Kojima promise.
Did anyone really? Like, what a memorable statement that came out that it just ended up falling flat on its face. It's just a meme.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, she breathes through her skin? Great, dude.
Yeah, she's like, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, why?
Yeah.
Why does she? Whatever. Some really good gameplay, Ben. Some really cool moments, but the story felt really unnecessary to me. And it ended on a whimper.
It was interesting because I went back on my review, Brad, and I looked at some things, and there are just some quotes where I'm like, yeah, that is exactly how I feel. I said it's as if Phantom Pain has more to say but gets abruptly cut off.
Yeah, it does.
And it's a shame because, obviously I think a lot of people were disappointed by the story, and that makes sense. There's a lot to be disappointed by, but I think if you really dig into everything, like you listen to all the tapes and all that sort of stuff, I do think there is some cool stuff in the story, and I do think it tries to tackle some things that you don't see too much of in games. But yeah, you just don't feel like you feel like you're getting like a first draft of something in a lot of ways, for sure.
The twist ending, or like part of the, I guess not the whole thing. I really hated that like kind of thing they teased along this whole time, and I was like, man, that's so lame. Why'd you even do this? I was just so like confused.
And if I'm thinking about the same thing, at least it's a reason for snubbing a certain individual.
Yeah, I guess, but still,
it's like, well, yeah, but why though?
I think. Well, if you don't want any spoilers for Phantom Pain, go ahead and skip.
I might have just spoiled the hell out of
this section, but I think it's been a long enough time that I think spoilers are on the table. And talking about Venom Snake and him not actually being Big Boss, I actually think that could be interesting, but it feels like it kind of it doesn't feel like they do quite enough to earn it, where the moment happens and you don't have that I think with a twist ending, you want to be like, oh my God, and you're like thinking back on things, and you definitely can think back on things, and they do play it up, and it is kind of interesting looking back at earlier sections of the game, because it is set up, but I just don't think there was enough that when the moment happens, you're like, oh, fuck yeah, you're so cool.
It's set up, Ben, to me, but like it doesn't feel necessary at all to me.
Not feeling necessary, I think, is a great succinct way of putting it, Brad.
Well, and it's not like David Hayter shows up and is like, as boss, and is like, hey, kept you waiting, Han,
but
right?
it's like
that would have made it okay, maybe.
The voice doesn't even make sense because you play as Big Boss, or like Big Boss in Ground Zeroes or whatever. Right. So it's like his voice was different there still.
Ian, I think there was some part of me, my brain was like, I know this isn't going to happen, but there was a part of me while I was reviewing it that was kind of like hoping to hear David Hayter's voice at some point, where it's like, oh, maybe if I do everything, just like, not logical at all, right? Like, not believable, but I was like, oh, is it voice? Yeah. Didn't happen.
I actually ran into David Hayter at a bar after a screening of a movie, a friend's thing, and it was really weird. And I talked to him, and I said, like, "What happened? Like, what happened, man?" And he was like, "I don't know. He just didn't call me." And I was like, "What the hell?" Like, just so weird.
Just the rug pulled out from under him. It's such a shame.
Yeah.
I definitely think David Hayter is the voice of Snake. And I know not everybody agrees with this, but I do like Kiefer's performance in Phantom Pain. It was definitely something that I warmed up to. Metal Gear Solid is my favorite game of all time. I've said that countlessly, but and it wasn't like an immediate acceptance, but I do think going through the whole game, I warmed up to it, and I think he did a pretty good job.
I think he did a good job, Ben. The only problem was that there's been so many games with David Hayter. Right. It's like beyond the point of return. Like, you can't just flip the switch like that so easily.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that is the number one issue. Not so much that Kiefer did this terrible job or whatever,
right?
But because this is the final Metal Gear Solid game, not counting Survive, of course,
which we don't,
right? And you just don't have it would just tie a nice bow on everything to have that consistency, I think. And consistency, I think, is like a defining word of this game, because the gameplay is truly excellent. And I think this is an excellent game in a lot of ways. Like, it is massive, but I think, and I say this in my review, the way that they use that space is so cool. Like, just getting from point to point, how intelligent the AI can be, and how many options you have. I mean, really, like, you can be incredibly creative and develop a very interesting play style with how you use things. And I think you just kind of run into those moments, and I always love this in games where it's like, can I do that? Will this thing react this way? And I think Phantom Pain pays that off enough that it ends up being really cool. I think the buddy system is really cool. Calling in a dog,
I was just thinking of that.
Or quiet is really neat.
D-Dog. Yeah, I love D-Dog, dude.
But like, it's always like a huge positive and a huge negative with Metal Gear Solid 5, because Mother Base, like this place that you're growing and you return to so many times throughout the game, is just not that interesting. Like, it's just not that fun walking around. It's pretty, I don't know, sparse, I guess.
Well, and even the like, the theoretically interesting ideas at play with Mother Base and the kind of interactivity and multiplayer aspects and stuff get kind of effed up by the microtransaction stuff, like paying to make timers go faster. It's like a phone game and stuff, and like the nuclear dearmament thing is pretty rad. Like, people actually achieved that like last year or this year, but
there's been some controversy over whether they did or they didn't,
whether or not it actually or for how long and whatever. But like, that's a really cool idea, like, in theory, but as far as gameplay goes and like a location, not the most interesting place.
I feel like Phantom Pain is a game I need to play again, because the microtransaction thing really was one of many clouds hanging over this game, but it just stings so hard when I think longtime fans were like, I just want to see this final chapter of the story. I just want to see how things are going to play out. And microtransactions can be annoying in any instance, but I think particularly here, where like if you love Metal Gear, you're in for the story, you're in for the characters. It's just not even something that you want in your brain. Like, you don't want to be trying to, listen to all these audio tapes and piece everything together and go through all this work, and then like somewhere in your mind, as all of that craziness is going on, being like, do I need to worry about this? Like, do I need to spend more money? Like, it's just a shitty thing to have to think about.
Yeah, it's like knowing the Switch t-shirt was in Breath of the Wild for me. Part of me was always just like, the world is slightly shattered.
It is funny though, because I wonder if Phantom Pain Camp today, if that would be as much of a controversy. I think it would, but I just think that sort of thing has been
for a game held as high as Metal Gear series. I think it would be. Sure.
It would feel just as out of place. I mean, like, it's not Let It Die, right? Where it's like, and I love Let It Die, but it gets real shystery with these microtransactions at a certain period, and yeah, it just never would fit, I think.
Ian, I think you're the one that always brings up Let It Die, and every single time you do, you're like, man, I kind of want to like check that out again.
I want to jump back in.
Cool,
I want
weird
to
game that
on the
was.
PS5.
Yeah.
Is it backwards compatible on PS5, dude? I'm downloading it.
I'm not sure. That's a great point.
My base will be destroyed.
Ben, my biggest problem with Metal Gear is I think Metal Gear Solid 4 was such a great ending for that series, and they were like led up to believe it was the ending, and it felt like the ending. It's the end of Solid Snake, his story, this journey we've been on for so long. Everything's coming to fruition, and it's like then we get Metal Gear 5, and there's like a few cool story moments, but when I beat it, I just felt like I don't even understand what the point of this game was.
Yeah,
what were you even trying to get across here? Of course, if the game didn't end the way it did, it probably would have been a lot better.
I think,
but just felt like it was disrespectful, dude. That's what I felt as a fan. I was disrespected on that front.
Speaking of divisive games, Halo 5 Guardians, a game that I feel like kind of an outlier in, where I feel like I like Halo 5 more than a lot of hardcore Halo fans do, but I also think a lot of complaints levied against it are completely fair. Brett, I know you're into Halo, and you were pretty disappointed in Halo 5.
I gave up playing it, dude.
Oh, wow.
We just got bored. I was doing call with Mike, and we just got bored and stopped. It's the only Halo game I've never finished. Well, like mainline ones.
Didn't you guys make it like all the way through like Army of Two and Kane and Lynch and stuff?
Yes.
The Mike Magic co-op not strong enough to get you through Halo 5 is brutal.
Yeah.
The story has a lot of problems.
Dude, like there's like 2 squads with 4 characters each. It's like, why is there so many characters in this game?
There's 2 squads. One of them has Master Chief, who you spend most of the game not playing as, despite him being critical to the story. Yeah, and that, I think that would be okay, right? Like, I think Halo 5 making huge changes and being different is totally cool. I actually respect that about it, but Locke sucks. Like, he's just not an interesting character. He doesn't stick out. There aren't any moments with him that I'm really attached to. He doesn't have something like the bond between Master Chief and Cortana to really drive that character forward. He's just kind of a wet blanket of a character, and I feel that way about a lot of the characters in Halo 5.
The only one I remember is Nathan Fillion or whatever, and that's it. And he's just quipping his way through every fight.
Just like Destiny, man.
Yeah.
Cortana becoming the villain is also sort of like we were talking about with MGS5. I think it's something that like could maybe work, but when it happened, it's just like, okay, like it's not that. I think the response that they want to elicit is like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. But I think the storytelling is so poor that when it happens, you're just kind of like, this is stupid. Like it does the opposite of what you want it to do.
Well, it's funny too, because like I haven't, it's like one of those games that's like kind of perpetually on my backlog, and like, oh, I want to get to that. And you saying that, it doesn't surprise me. Like, I feel like they were getting into weird territory with Cortana even in 4.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
So it's like, oh, okay, that's what they did. It's like, so yeah, I don't know. It's a strange. I feel like I've always been in like a strange outlier on Halo story in general. Like, I've always enjoyed those games. I've always thought that they've had great campaigns, but the story themselves, like, I've never really gotten attached to in any way. And I feel like they lean so heavily on expanded fiction with the books and stuff that I got into Halo 4 and I'm just like, I've got no idea what's going on.
I think Breakout, in terms of a multiplayer mode, this like, hey, you're gonna die immediately if you die very, very easily, and if you die, you're out of the round, like Counter-Strike. I remember my experience with Breakout just being very intense and like exciting. Like, we even streamed a little bit of Breakout. I remember that stream, like, we were kind of on pins and needles, just because of the intensity of the mode. I think Warzone, this sort of like giant multiplayer mode where two big teams are going against each other. You've got AI that you can fight for points. You can summon all of these vehicles and all this stuff. Is really cool, and I had a lot of fun with it. I do think the requisition system and the card system is needlessly complex to the point where it's just a convoluted mess. And it's like not fun digging through to try to understand it, and I think it's restrictive in a way that is a little weird. Like, even just going through my review again, just like looking at the explanation, it's just like, I don't know. I remember Halo 1 being a game where I could just take it anywhere and show it to anybody. We could jump in and they could have a basic appreciation for it. And I think that simplicity helps. Not that you shouldn't have depth or complexity to your game, but I think some of the stuff with Warzone felt like too much. Our third game, it's funny because I when I was putting this together, the thought didn't cross my brain, but this is also yet another game that I can throw the divisive label on that came out in 2015. And that is Fallout 4.
Oh man.
Fallout 4.
There is a lot to talk about with Fallout 4. I know...
Man. So it's funny because, okay, so you're talking about Halo 5 and MGS, and like those are both games that like I wanted to get to, and then for whatever logistical reason in my life I didn't get to. Fallout 4 was a game I was really looking forward to, like really wanted to dive into, and I started to dive into it, and I just fell out of it really quickly, despite hearing about things that were better and interesting later on. I think that, like, I think some of the management and base building stuff, like, it in a weird way, it hooked me to the point that it then pulled me out of the game. Because I got obsessed with building stuff and not really progressing the story. But then like at some point, like, I ended up losing interests before getting back to the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my issue with the base building blood, and I wonder if this happened to you at all, or if you were able to kind of get to it more quickly than I was, but I remember trying to put together my base and things just like not working as well as I wanted them to, where it's like, wait, I want to connect this to this, but it was like really finicky, and or just like putting lights in it or whatever. Like I spent a lot of time just trying to make stuff work with the base building, and I think it's a really cool idea, but it just was never as intuitive, I think, as I wanted it to be.
It's funny because I have been a lifelong mega fan of Fallout. Like, played 1 and 2 and 3 like a few times. New Vegas obviously was fantastic. Just devoured all of them. I even played Tactics, and like 4. It speaks pretty poorly to 4 that I don't even remember if I beat it or not. I know I played a decent amount of it, but then just kind of at some point stopped, I think. But yeah, there was just something about it that just didn't hook me. It was really weird.
I think there's a weird aspect to Fallout 4 too, that like even though I felt like I was down for more Fallout, when I got in there and I got the radio going, and it just started looping like all the same songs I'd already heard so many times for Fallout 3, and was one of the reasons I loved Fallout 3. It sort of made it feel like I was just starting over, like I was just doing the same game again on a different map.
Yeah, it just kind of felt outdated to me, like, and I wanted them to...
That's super fair.
This was it was kind of the beginning of my feelings about Bethesda that carried over into Skyrim and stuff, where it's just like, nah, man. Like, or I mean, Skyrim was first, I guess. But I was just like, you guys, you gotta catch up. You gotta catch up. You gotta fix these bugs. You gotta make these people look better. You gotta make your environments and stories kind of a little more snappy. Like, you gotta catch up. And I feel like Bethesda still kind of hasn't. Like, it's sort of weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
And like, I was a huge fan of Morrowind as well. Like, I played insane amounts of Morrowind, and it's just like same thing. You gotta update, guys.
Honestly, it's really hard for me to disagree with anything that you're saying. I think Fallout 4 is a shambling mess that I love. Like, it's super buggy. It like, go look at Fallout 4 faces, and this is true even at the time, but they look fucking terrible. They're just like these shitty plastic doll looking things. They're really bad. It can be a very ugly game, and I think the main story is super disappointing and not the reason to play the game. But I remember reviewing it and feeling a lot of pressure because it was like, oh, it's a new Fallout game, and oh, it's like, it's going to be so massive. Like, I just remember feeling a ton of pressure. But I look back on that review really cherishing my time with it. And I think what I loved about Bethesda games, like the reason why I got so into like Oblivion and Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and all that stuff, like the reason why I enjoyed those games was not this sense of like, oh, I've got to get everything done, I've got to see the story through, but I just loved going into them and being curious and having things happen. And I think Fallout 4 does a better job of being environment-wise a little bit more distinct. Like, it's not really afraid as much as bright colors. Like, things are a little bit more tranquil and peaceful. But then as you get to the edges of the map, things are like more dark and grim. And it still captured that feeling of like, I could go out in a direction and there'd be something I would find. It'd be some sort of character that I could get involved with, some story that I get involved in. And some of them I thought were really creative and really well done. And it had that spirit to it, which is why I think I liked so much time in it. But I can't also really... I totally agree with all the criticisms. Like, I think the way that they changed the dialogue just sucks. Like, it just is no good when your options are so simplified and you don't feel like you have a great sense of control over what you're saying to other people.
It felt like Bethesda wasn't on top of their game like what they used to be. Like, they weren't a premier RPG company to me at this time. They still aren't right now, at least.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I think this is definitely kind of the tipping point for Bethesda. You mentioned them being behind, Ian, and I just don't think they've come out with anything that has really changed that perception yet. Fallout 76 certainly didn't.
Certainly did not.
Heavens no.
And it's crazy because you mentioned like Morrowind and like Oblivion was an early game in the previous generation that felt like magic at the time, or at least it did to me, where it was like, this looks so good and there's no other game that is doing this. I remember people tried to compare Two Worlds to Oblivion, and I didn't play Two Worlds, but it's like, just looking at it, it's like, nah, this Oblivion seems like it has way more going on. So that sense of being ahead of the curve, and I think Skyrim definitely felt that way as well. And Skyrim, took over the world.
I mean, for me, and I know this is not like the most popular opinion, but like, to me, Bethesda is a company that's felt like they've been resting on their laurels since probably Oblivion. Like, they kind of just did it again for Skyrim, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Skyrim felt old to me when it came out, and I know not a lot of people would agree, but maybe it's just because it came out around the same time as Dark Souls, and Dark Souls just like changed my life. So there's that. But like, Skyrim felt like 5 years old to me when it came out, or at least a couple years old. And so like, besides id Software stuff, which is like crazy, Bethesda proper, it feels like they've just been like riding it, man. And it's like, come on, guys, like, I know you've got good ideas in there and you've got talent. You just have to, like, I don't know, aim smaller, maybe? Like, don't try to do, like, big everything games if you can't fix fucking doors, like, and faces. Like, if you can't do it, don't do it,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's somewhere in there, like, and I think you have to get past like a certain breaking point to invest in one of these worlds, and then once you're in, all of that crap kind of fades away.
Blood,
like,
that's exactly what happened to me. That is it.
You get
exactly.
used to it.
Yeah.
Like there is a point.
It beats me to submission.
I remember with Fallout 3, like I loved exploring that game so much that like some of the most hideous bugs I had ever encountered in video games are in Fallout 3, and you know I just sort of put up with it. You know, it's like, I cannot use the right analog stick anymore. I cannot look left and right. And the only way that I can fix this is to go to a save from like 2.5 hours ago. I guess I'll just load that save and repeat what I did. With so many other games, I would just be out, you know. And so
you mentioned, Skyrim feeling kind of behind at the time that you played it. I wonder if Skyrim benefited from Oblivion and Skyrim kind of releasing in the same console generation, where like you compare it to Oblivion, and it is just a huge step up. Whereas with Fallout 4, you don't have that same generation comparison.
You certainly do not. Yeah. I definitely remember that bit.
Yeah. I do have to wonder though, like Skyrim received such a huge, phenomenal level of success that like, and to be fair, so did Fallout 3. That I wonder, like as Bethesda, you mentioned just kind of doing like the same thing again. That kind of makes sense from their point of view,
of
where
course.
It's like,
right.
we did so amazingly well, and everybody plays our games, and everybody talks about our games, that I kind of get that mentality in this instance. It's funny looking at this Fallout 4 footage and just watching this gameplay trailer. I'm like, I'm just getting warm feelings. Like we've mostly dogged on this game, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I kind of want to play this.
I mean, you had fun with it. That's good.
I did have fun with it.
Yeah.
Well, and like, I mean, I'm obviously, I've been in this episode a harsh critic of Bethesda, but there is something to be said for that. Like, their games have that feeling, and like you want to go to there, and even if you're encountering bugs and stuff like Blood was saying, like there are really nice feelings in these games, even the games I didn't like as much, like Skyrim or Fallout 4. There are so many just cool moments where you can just be in this place and like do something totally innocuous, like whatever, just walking around picking stuff up and just really feel it.
Right.
And that is a nice thing, it's a special thing.
Our fourth game, not divisive. We are on an upswing now. We're going to be talking about The Witcher 3. Blood, take it away.
Wait, I thought Ian didn't like this game.
Yeah,
I don't love it.
It's going to be divisive on this panel, but
well, I think it's fair to say that at large, not an incredibly divisive.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think that's par for my course,
Sure. To me, The Witcher 3 has done so many things that I've wanted out of RPGs for such a long time, in terms of the storytelling and the writing and the branching narrative. And I think it, I think one of the big things is like it set a new bar for side quests that I think now we kind of expect for side quests in an RPG. To where before they could be really disposable, throwaway, like, okay, just go kill 5 wolves. And in The Witcher 3, a lot of these side quests were like very substantial, interesting stories to tell. And if you would go around and do all of them, there are a couple instances where some things might feel repetitive, but for the most part, every one of these situations felt like an individual story, an individual tale that had just as much care put into it as the main quest. I think that really paid off. And I think that he also did a really good job in terms of the way your progression through the map works, to where, yes, like you could just sort of go off in any direction after a certain point in the game, but they almost give you like training wheels for the open world with this smaller zone at first, where it's like, okay, we're going to let you explore this area and then we'll take you out to the larger map. And so in a way, it's almost like 3 open worlds in one, because you have the starter area, and then you have the main map, and then you have Skellige later on. And as you're going through all of that, as you're going through those main story beats, I just had this sense that multiple times I felt like I understood the tone and the mood of this game, and then I would get to another part of it and it would be drastically different. Like when you get into Novigrad, that city is so large and so complex, and you can go in and out of all of these different houses, and now you're not just dealing with like farmers and ghosts and stuff, but you're like dealing with this like criminal underworld and having to navigate the back and forth of these different characters, and like even the types of monsters would be different, like vampires preying on drunks and all of that. And then you get to Skellige, and you're dealing with that whole kind of like Norse inspired area, and so then you also have this thing with your companions, to where you meet these different people along the way, and some of them are from previous games and some of them are from the books, and it does a really good job of bringing you into the world of the books without having to have read all the books, because I'd read some of it, but I feel like if you dig into some of the like optional lore stuff, and even if you don't, there's enough there to like, okay, this is why Ciri is important, this is why Yennefer is important, and it kind of pulls that stuff together in such a really satisfying way and feels like a continuation of their stories. And then when you get towards the end, the way it like has these kind of like almost anime-esque culminations with the battle scenes and the ending and stuff, like I think it really works, and there are times where it does feel like a little bit too long, where it does drag a bit, when you should probably be starting to wrap things up. But yeah, I think overall it was just it really pulled, I feel like, storytelling forward more than anything else, and yeah, integrating like an open world in a different way, to where, sure, if you tried to do everything, it's probably a mistake. I did a second playthrough where I was like, I'm just gonna do everything, and it can be exhausting. But I think if you just kind of do a more focused approach and say, okay, I'm going to do some side quests over here, I'm going to go this way, I'm going to go that way, and I'm not going to try to like exhaust every point on the map, then it can be a lot more satisfying.
That's a problem that I run into when I play Witcher 3 I always fall into that trap of trying to exhaust the entire map. Blood, I think that was extremely well said. Something that I wanted to bring up, and it's an RPG that I think frustratingly a lot of RPGs still struggle with, is the fact that, Geralt is on this quest, but the world isn't revolving around him. Like, it's not like everybody stops what they're doing to help you, and you're not this, like, all-important savior to everyone all the time. Like, I feel like Witcher 3 does such a great job of putting you in a world where there's so much strife and conflict going on, and it doesn't sit down to, like, give you a textbook explanation of it. You just are inhabiting a world and dealing with characters who already have a lot going on, and just slowly come to a greater understanding of all that stuff just through very natural interactions. And I feel like Witcher 3 is one of those games that, like, I just kind of keep dipping in every so often. And this game came out 5 years ago, and I'm still really impressed with the way that characters talk to each other, because of course there's a ton of dialogue, but the way the camera work happens for even basic conversation and the amount of emotion that characters can display is still really impressive, and I think still a lot farther ahead than comparable games.
Yeah, man, I agree. I love this game. I have like some few nitpicks with it. Like, I was mad a character didn't show up in it who was in a big character this second game. Bloody right. Rant about this. The combat to me is like not great, but it's okay. But man, just being in this world was such a pleasant journey for me. I think you're right. These side quests, like I still think about some of the side quests of this game, like early on the werewolf one, and you just make a decision has a huge outcome like that.
That's a really good quest.
I was invested in the series too because I played the first two, so it was like a huge leap. I felt like 1 to 2 was a pretty big leap though, but 2 to 3 was like an insane leap where I was like, wow, this is really good. This felt like Bloodthirster, like the new kind of way of doing RPGs. And I think back at like Fallout, how we were talking about earlier, the same year, it was where I was like, I can't remember if this was post-Witcher when I played this game or played Fallout.
Yeah, I think Witcher was earlier in the year. I think Witcher was the summer and Fallout was the fall.
I was just like, man, Fallout feels old because Witcher introduced so many cool things I loved.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that really makes it work is, like having branching paths wasn't entirely new, but I feel like they did a lot of things intentionally to like really like make you commit, to where like you wouldn't see an outcome to something until many hours later. But they also did such a good job of making whatever choice you made feel like that was sort like, well, in one way it feels like this is just the choice, like this is just the way the story is, but at the same time, like you also didn't necessarily know what the right choice was. Like it broke away from, this is the, like Mass Effect, Paragon, Renegade type choices. And you're just like, this is, anything I choose is going to have a bad outcome. Anything I choose is going to have benefits. And so like, what do I go with? And not knowing, not being able to just like see the outcome and then reload a save, I think makes a big difference to that. And even stuff like, whether you wanted to go with Yennefer or Triss as your companion, how you treated your interactions with Ciri, like really struck home for me. So like it really gave me that sense of like a father figure, like allowing her to make her own choices. But yet you didn't necessarily have to do that, right? And so when we get to the end of the game and like I hear what Huber's ending was compared to my ending, and I'm like, I'm almost like, oh no,
Yeah.
It's like that's is that really good for her? But to him, it felt like a good ending. So that's kind of crazy to me that like the support is there for both of those things, and it's not just here's best ending and the sort of second best ending and the third best ending. It's like people just interpret that based on how they took their choices in those games.
This isn't, you mentioned like not falling into the super binary Paragon Renegade sort of system, and this is not something that Witcher 3 did. This is essential to the Witcher universe, but it's just so nice playing a character who isn't this like super virtuous, like always makes the right decision kind of person, where it's like, yeah, I'll do that for you if you pay me. Like that bluntness to it, I think adds so much to it. But at the same time, it's not the like typical edgy anti-hero where it's like it's like trying to constantly shove into your face like how like not moral they are. It doesn't feel forced in that way. It just feels like, no, this is who this person is, and they are this way because they're part of this thing. Like it just feels very contextualized, I think, that makes it work and believable. Yeah. Speaking of combat, I do think the combat is very inelegant, I guess I would say. Like when I get into fights in Witcher 3, I feel like I kind of just get through them rather than display this like awesome mastery. There's like this lack of smoothness to it. Like there are times where I feel like I'm just kind of bumbling about because of the way that movement works. It's not a great way of explaining it, but what I will say in combat's favor is I do think it manages to carry the flavor of the world into combat. Like there are times where like you slice a drowner in half or you cut off a bandit's head or something. Like there is kind of this like visual splendor to it that I think really works. And I like incorporating different signs into combat as well. And just like
me too.
Having to study up on monsters and being like, oh no, this monster is weak to this specific thing. adds a lot to it as well. So I agree. I don't think it's the best, but I do think there are some points in its favor. Ian, you mentioned how Dark Souls sort of changed what you appreciated about games, and you're really going to like this final game that we're talking about, because of course we're fucking talking about Bloodborne. A game I think that it was nice, because this doesn't happen too often, I think, with Easy Allies, but I think kind of like unanimously everyone got behind and loves dearly.
First game everyone bought, I remember.
Did we all like? Did we do like a run where we picked up?
We did a run. Yeah,
I think we did. Was this Hustle Back? I think
no, that was MGS5.
Yeah.
Oh, that was MGS5.
Same year though. That Hustle Back was 2015.
Same Hustle Back. Blood. We all went. Like the entire staff went to a local game store to get we used to do it all the time. And Bloodworth texted somebody Hustle Back after we'd been gone for like an hour and a half.
And it's
like
never
2 hour
left
lunch.
us. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was an appropriate comment, but deeply fun.
Of course, yeah.
But just the choice of saying "hustle back" is just such like a dad thing to say.
Yeah.
It's just so funny because like I don't even remember this.
It's
so funny. It left a mark on all of us.
It's like when you like make a bad play when you're playing like a sport like basketball or something, and the coach is just like so bummed out, and he's like, just hustle back. Like he's just disappointed.
Yeah.
But Bloodborne, we've talked about it a lot, but we're going to talk about it here because it came out in 2015. Really magical game that I think obviously super comparable to the Souls series, but really has a strong identity of its own.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's to this day my favorite game. Like
favorite game ever.
Tied with Symphony of the Night. I guess Bloodborne is my favorite game, and like, I prefer it. Like, I love all the Souls games. I prefer it to all of them, just because again, it's so immediate, and I think that the health payback kind of lifesteal. There's a fighting game term for it that I'm not remembering right now, but I love that system, and I think it's so smart, and the design choices all teach you in such an appropriate way how to correctly play this game, probably better than the other Souls games do, and I just think it's everything I love in games in one game. It's like lore-based storytelling, really direct, immediate gameplay, a mysterious, beautiful world, and gothic cosmic horror. Like, can't ask for anything more than that, except for more of that. But yeah, Bloodborne to me is just like damn near perfect. I wish that it ran better. I wish that it had a better frame rate. I wish that they would patch it for PS5.
Just make it happen.
It's
funny because I think with Demon Souls and then Dark Souls 1 and 2, there was so much, and you even see this in the marketing, made about how difficult the Souls series is. And it just felt like it kind of became this defining trait. And I think in less capable hands, I think like things like Bloodborne and the things that came after would get so ridiculously hard in a way that it would kind of lose its appeal. It would start to feel like a grind, or just like it would ratchet up the difficulty in a way that felt very uncreative. I think one of the things that's so remarkable about Bloodborne is it takes sort of the bones of the Souls series and applies it in a completely different way. Like when you're fighting bosses or enemies, or the way that you move around, the systems that are in place feel way more active, and the skills that you have to develop, while they're similar to Souls, they're different in a meaningful way. It's not like you're just playing Dark Souls with a new wrapper, and that's not just the aesthetic of the game, but it's baked into so many of the mechanics.
I really love this game. I can nitpick the shit out of this game on so many things that I don't like about it, but I think what it sets out to do, it does exceptionally well. Like you guys were saying earlier, like an easy way to describe this game to someone is it's like Dark Souls, but it's in like a gothic horror setting.
Right. And faster.
Like that could be true at a point, but once you actually start playing this game, you notice how different everything is actually. like you guys were saying, the combat is like how it's designed to be much more aggressive and fast compared to past games. Like the passive route in this game is not really there. I think it's the shield in this game is a joke to that. The developers, to me, making a joke at it, just letting you know it's like, no, this is not a viable way to do things.
They literally make a joke in the item description that it like engenders passivity.
And I think the transition from more of like what you expected of werewolves kind of thing in a gothic setting to going to the more cosmic horror route was a really smart thing and super engaging. I like the idea of chalice dungeons in this game. I think it's really cool going through them, and there's like optional bosses, which is rad, but I think they get pretty old pretty fast.
Brad, that is exactly what I was going to bring up. My biggest complaint about Bloodborne is I think chalice dungeons are a great idea, but they didn't wow me in the way that I wanted them to, despite there being cool stuff.
They feel too much the same all the time, despite like there's some slight changes to them, like aesthetically, but they're still way too similar.
It feels like an early access to chalice dungeons. Like it feels like the idea was there and they didn't have time to fully flesh it out before a release date.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like random kind of I'm getting lost in this area, I don't know what's going to happen at any moment kind of thing, or what enemies I'm going to run into.
It's an idea that I would love for them to return to, though.
Yes, I think it was like them toying briefly with like roguelike kind of things almost.
But I do appreciate the if Bloodborne 2 was just chalice dungeons in that style or something, like a Hades kind of a thing, like a roguelike, I would be really disappointed, because I think that one of the sterling strengths of From Software is their level design and their world design, and Bloodborne is just top notch, and like the routing and separate paths and stuff in this, like even just in the first area, like in Yharnam there, like bonkers. Like you can go like 5 different ways to get to Cleric Beast or Gascoigne, and it's just like, did you find the music box or not? Like that's a whole other route, and it's just genius. It's so amazing.
And that's the thing, right? Like it's hard for me to even come down too hard on chalice dungeons, because there's this entire other game that is so immaculate and so full,
right?
That you really can't do that. And I think about how many games I play and how many enemies I fight and how many bosses I encounter, and this game came out so long ago, and it is burned into my brain. I mean, things have so much of a presence, like the way the Cleric Beast screams, or those giant gross looking pig dudes, or the eyes stuff. I mean, like it's such a fundamental thing. I think people like don't tend to bring this stuff up because it's so expected. Like you have to have art direction and sound design and atmosphere to make a game. But I think it is just executed with such perfection in Bloodborne that's what makes it tower above so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, I mean, I talk about lore-based storytelling all the time, and I mentioned it earlier, but for me, this is something we were talking about in the most recent episode of Reaction Shots, where we talked about the films of Bong Joon-ho, where I think the best films make you an active participant in that they don't just feed you every piece of information, and there are things even on a subconscious level that happen in Act 1 that pay off toward the end, or like open-ended questions, where you have to think to fill in gaps and stuff like that. And that's what I love. And I think From Software is among the best at this, but Bloodborne especially, like, I just love that element of the storytelling in this game. And I think one of the best examples of it is when you finally start seeing the amygdalas everywhere. And like there's a gameplay mechanic where if you have over a certain amount of insight, you start to see them, and there's a story moment where after that you see them everywhere, and it's just like those have been there the whole game, you just couldn't see them. And like that is such a cool thing, rooted in both gameplay mechanics and the story, that's just kind of there, and it happens, and that game is just full of stuff like that. And I love that, because I feel respected, and I feel like that's my preferred way of storytelling in games, because I'm not saying it's the only way or always the best way for a certain story, but I just really love it because it really makes me feel active, not just in killing monsters, but in understanding what the hell is going on.
Right.
Yeah.
I should have mentioned this during the Witcher 3 section because it also applies there, but Bloodborne has excellent DLC as well.
Oh my god.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, just like narratively, the gameplay, like just everything, it's just this huge, like, I think it's so good that you don't even really think about it as DLC. You just think about it as like part of Bloodborne. It's like it just like grew it out. It doesn't feel like it's jammed in there. It's just so natural. Yeah.
It feels essential.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say it is essential. It is essential.
I would say it is.
Play Bloodborne.
Some of the best boss fights in the game.
Yeah.
Like some of the hardest and best boss fights.
Yeah.
Like Maria is great. The last one is great. I don't want to say what it is, but like, oh my god.
I would say arguably the best boss fights in a game that was not slouching when it came to bosses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like there are a few kind of like not as great bosses in that game, but not many. Like usually in games like this, you can point to like, you know, a little handful that are like, yeah, that was dumb. This one has, you know, a couple, but even those are still kind of fun in their own way.
I think it's safe to say that we're pretty ecstatic about Bloodborne. So join us in our part 3 where we play Bloodborne.
Oh, dang.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the final part of Gen That Was 2015. Brad is playing Bloodborne. How could we not play Bloodborne? We just spent so much time gushing about it, and now we're going to live through it.
Hell yeah.
And gush about it.
And gush about it.
And gosh. Oh yeah, of course.
If you're wondering if this was a Souls game, there you go.
Yep, your slow doors.
This thing is just terrifying to see. It's just
Man.
first thing.
Stop turning, dude.
I would love in one of these games if you had a chance to like tame a beast and carry it with you.
Oh, sure.
That would be actually really cool, man.
to
But the
sit
AI
on enemies.
shenanigans, I'm sure.
A Beastmaster class.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're going for it.
Hey, you know,
Rip.
you attempted it. That's what matters.
You know what? This is the canon route.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's meant to happen. So
I was just doing the canon
Hey, man,
route
we just
for
care
all you
about the
viewers at
lore.
home. Yeah, dude.
Would you rather be a werewolf or a vampire?
vampire for sure.
What kind of vampire? We're
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
like the real
werewolves
classical
don't even know
vampire?
what they did in the morning. That's not a fun
Sounds like a
experience.
Friday night to me.
Nice.
Also, werewolves don't live forever, necessarily.
Will I be able to go outside in the day as a vampire?
Well, I mean,
Are we doing
You know.
the classic ones or like modern, sparkly ones?
you could have creative liberty with it. It's your fantasy. You can be
We're
a
not
daywalker.
doing modern sparkly though. Come on,
Hunter's Dream,
so good.
a real atmospheric hub, I'd say.
The evolution of the hunter's dream throughout this game is so fun.
Yeah. Look at that.
Look at that.
He's huge, man, when his legs
Yeah.
are all
Yeah.
sprawled out. Look at that guy.
Wow.
Holy jeez.
I feel like Ragdoll is often like hilarious, but here it's kind of terrifying. Just
Yeah,
seeing their
it can be.
large ass body parts flop around.
Man, that's two
Terror-larious.
slow doors. Two slow doors in like
Hilarious.
the first minute of the game.
Just look at these streets though, like the shine off the bricks and like all of the
Oh, it's
like there's a
shiny.
manhole even just yeah. It's such a good screen.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
These gargoyles are cool too.
One of
These
the
pillars.
Yeah, they
best
are.
cities in video games, I think. No hyperbole.
There's old Yarnum down there.
Oh
Yeah.
shit, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things with the Souls game is to start looking around after you've been places and realize like, oh, that's not just
Yeah.
a background.
You see that terrifying place? You can die there.
You can die.
Yeah. Oh shit!
Oh boy.
Oh my god, Bradley
that
Ellis.
did not go well.
Well, that just goes to
I got
show.
stuck.
That just goes to show, like, you can't take things for granted in this game.
That
like,
was like a domino effect
Yeah.
of pain.
you can get
You were just trying to
overwhelmed.
make a talking point for us. Intentional.
I was
Right.
trying to reason with those villagers.
What's your guys' favorite Bloodborne weapon?
I like several of them a lot. I really like Threaded Cane. I really like the Greatsword. Of course. I really love the Kirk Hammer as well. Those are probably my top 3.
Blades of Mercy.
I
for
like a
me,
lot
honestly.
of the DLC items a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Whirligig Saw is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Beast Cleaver. I actually like the Church Pick a lot too.
That dual-handed one that Maria's.
Yeah, I don't remember what that's called.
Yeah, Raikujo maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's actually kind of weird with Bloodborne is the fact that, this basic cleaver can feel like a cannon weapon in some ways.
Well, and
Yeah.
it can
Well,
take you the whole way too.
Yeah, it's a fantastic weapon. Just how much density there is to the world. Like, there's just so much stuff littering the ground
Yeah.
and surrounding it. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like you can take any one particular screenshot and just be kind of amazed at the amount going on.
Yeah, there's like a pile of lumber or something over there, and sandbags, and just like this sense that like everyone is just bolting themselves in, and this coffin that's chained up,
The
dude.
coffins.
Yeah.
that are
So many
chained up
locks.
is so good. One, that's one of my favorite things about FromSoft games is just like that coffin and everything about this place tells the story, right? Like this is they've been fighting, they've been dealing with this for a long time. The city is in, mid peril, and they're chaining their coffins because things come back. And it's just
Yeah.
like you just get all that immediately.
Well, and even the fact that there's like a bunch of weeds coming out of the middle of the street, I think it tells something, about, like you're saying, how long this has been going on.
Yeah.
Give me the good attack, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
Not this one.
He's just
Stop doing
he's
this.
not giving you the parry tutorial move.
Yeah.
There,
No, that
No,
wasn't.
that's not it.
That's better, but
that little
just
shove.
do it, man.
There it is.
There we go.
Nice. And just that sound when you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very satisfying.
Also, the anguish on his face, pretty convincing.
Love how you
All
just get coated in blood in this game.
Yeah.
This is a thing that is by no means exclusive to Bloodborne, and I don't always know like the right way to do it, but I do. It does kind of irk me sometimes in games when like you're making a ton of noise and dudes are like 10 feet away and they just are on their AI path, and obviously in Bloodborne it kind of works in your favor because it makes things more manageable, which is good, but there are definitely times where I wish enemies had a more natural reaction to what was
Yeah.
going on around them.
I wonder if in this game, if it would just be too overwhelming at
Yeah,
times.
I definitely think it would.
Since
I think you'd have
packs
to
can have-
completely rearrange enemy placement.
The look on that sniper or whatever, his top hat and that just big long hair coming out.
This is what I love about this game, though, and all From games is like, I mean, it's a meme at this point, but everyone says like, you level up, but it's like, the fact that the first time playing this, it took me like hours to get here,
Right.
and now all of us can get here in like 10 minutes, It's just so cool. And mainly the only thing that changes is like your knowledge of the mechanics, obviously, and also your confidence.
Yeah, I think that's why kind of this Souls format has taken hold so much, because I think when you traditionally think about RPGs, really a lot of it it's like 90% stats, right? Like
Right.
Yeah.
that's why like, the meme of like, oh, gotta grind, or why grinding became such a big focus, like, oh, I gotta grind to get through this boss. And while you can definitely do that in Souls, and it does make a huge improvement, like, depending on the player, you can be entirely capable and be under-leveled or not optimized, and I think relying on your ability more than the stats that you have is what is so interesting about these games.
I'm gonna bail on that. That would have gone real bad. I always think just taking your time in these games is the key to success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of the instances.
The worst feeling deaths for me are when something goes wrong and you have a panic situation and you just kind of instinctively move in a direction to try to get out of it, and you like run into
Right.
a wall or something, you back
Yeah.
yourself into a corner.
Especially this game, there's shit everywhere.
Yeah, I really like that in this game and other From games that, like, yes, you can die by falling off a ledge, but they never lean into that too much. Like, I feel like that doesn't happen very often. Like, those sort of instant deaths. I feel like a lot of what you face,
Sure.
you have a fighting chance, and you have to kind of, like, fuck up multiple times. Obviously, there are counterexamples to that.
Yeah,
but
I can't think of too many issues with that here, but definitely I'm going through the mines in Demon Souls right now, and like,
sure.
Oh my god.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. Is like playing through Demon Souls now. It's really funny to see, basically like the alpha version of, beta version of this format, because like those first couple of bosses, Dark Souls 2 suffers from this a little bit too, but like those first like 4 or 5 bosses are basically like a joke. They're kind of gimmicky. They're not that hard. A few of them you can just kind of stand in one spot, and if you have the healing items, you're fine, you know. This feels like a natural evolution of that, and like fighting Maneater, where falling is the main cause of death almost every time. It's like
Yeah.
they don't do that kind
like
of stuff
going
as much anymore.
back and playing Demon Souls bosses, yeah, it's definitely a lot different than I remember. And I think just the biggest reason is knowledge now.
Yeah.
Like at the time, I remember that shit being crazy.
Yeah.
I don't even think this is a slight against Demon Souls. It's like you were saying, Ian. It's a natural progression, but it's just more finely tuned, I think.
Absolutely.
Like the difficulty curve is a lot smoother, and yeah, I think that's something about Demon Souls, like fighting the Phalanx boss, right? Like it's just so trivial to the point where it's like not that enjoyable, but even though like we can all beat the Cleric Beast, I would never say the Cleric Beast is trivial. Like I still have to really pay attention and be on top of my
you can still
shit.
die real fast. If you're new to this game, this is a good strat to get past these guys and get them stuck.
Part of me wonders like how intentional this kind of thing is, because I feel like there's a few points in Bloodborne in particular when you can do this kind of thing.
There's a spot like this, and like you can cheese Havel in Dark Souls in a similar way. Like if it's not intentionally built in, they're definitely very aware of it and very okay with leaving it in. You know.
Yeah.
Well, it's just letting you use the environment as a weapon, which I kind of like.
I forgot. Was I supposed to run past him?
Well,
Definitely difficult at this part of the game.
Okay, bye.
If you kill him, does it prevent the Gascoigne's daughter?
I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah, I think I'm supposed to just run past him the first time.
The pigs are like a perfect combination of hilarious and terrifying.
Yeah.
Hilarifying.
Now I'm covered in
Hilarifying.
sludge. I'm going to show the viewers at home a nice little tip also if you're struggling. Get that Bold Hunter's Mark. Equip it. Then we're going to run to the boss. Usually you need insight to level up, and you usually can't right away. So if you use
a
Hunter's Mark after seeing the Cleric Beast, it'll give you insight. So you can go back to the doll now.
Yeah, because she doesn't wake up until you have insight at all. Yeah.
That's a good tip.
Interesting.
So like if you have blood echoes and you know he's there, it's a good way to prep for the fight.
Yeah.
You can get a few levels in or whatever.
Yeah, because normally you can't level up until after you have done that.
I think that's a roadblock or something that can help people who are struggling.
Another callback to Demon Souls. They make you beat Phalanx before
voice
you
actor
level up.
Right here too. This is the Maid in Black voice actor. Yeah. Beasts are like always vulnerable to fire too.
Look at that damage.
Which is why it sucks that there's no pyromancer in this. Nice.
A big challenge about this boss, I think, is just the arena you find him in.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say that's the
very
number
narrow.
one thing. I always love those moments in boss fights where you make that decision where you're like, well, this isn't safe, but he's so low on health, and you just kind of go into like
you go
a rage, and you're just like, well, either he dies or I die, and you just like go for it.
Greed mode.
Yeah.
GG.
GG.
Take your time at home, everybody, when fighting a boss.
Well, and that's the thing too, because it results in so many times when there's like this sliver of health left on this boss, and you had so much health left, but somehow it got you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's just like, one more hit, and they would have been gone. But that's going to do it for Gen That Was 2015. Thank you to my panelists, Bradley Ellis, Ian Hink, Daniel Bloodworth. This was a lot of fun, except for the fact that now I just want to play Bloodborne,
Yep.
Project
So there's that.
Beast.
Project Beast. We will see you next year for 2016. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is the Gen That Was.